Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot believe that we are now only 3 days away from the release of Pokémon Sword and Shield. As always, of course, I'm Professor Noki, and you're here once again for ProfNoki. Today, I am very happy to be bringing you all a complete breakdown of absolutely everything that we know so far about the upcoming titles of Pokémon Sword and Shield. And since some would probably call me borderline obsessed with categorizing things, I have broken this video down into 2 parts. And up first, we have the information that we know about the making of these games and all of the hard work that went behind the creation and development of them. Starting, of course, with the development itself. For those of you who have been following along since the very first reveal of these games way back in February, you're probably well aware of those producers and directors who have been working very hard on these games. The producer, Junichi Masuda, director Shigeru Omori, and art director James Turner have been on countless different interviews throughout the last few months to go over all of the information that they have to give ahead of the release of these games. As for the time frame of which they've been worked on, they've actually been in development since before the release of Pokémon Sun and Moon, which was in November of 2016, meaning they've actually been in the works for the better part of 3+ years. The games were initially teased during E3 of 2017, when Tsunekazu Ishihara of the Pokemon Company announced that the next brand new core series titles would be coming to the Nintendo Switch, but that's all the info they had to give at that time. Then, in May of 2018, the Pokemon Company held a press conference where they announced that the upcoming titles would not be in the same style of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which had literally just been announced. But due to the fan backlash against the series and the games and the changes they made to it, they decided to give this announcement in order to qualm a lot of the fears about the Generation 8 games. Sword and Shield were formally announced on Pokemon Day, February 27th of this year, during a special Nintendo Direct with Ishihara, Masuda, and Omori. During this event, an official trailer was shown off of the brand new region of Galar, as well as a few returning Pokemon and the brand new starters. The marketing cycle for these games has been drastically different from that of Pokemon Sun and Moon, which practically gave away almost everything about what the games were going to have in store ahead of their launch, including a few, in my opinion at least, that definitely should have remained a mystery until players were given the opportunity to discover it firsthand in game. Things like Team Rainbow Rocket in the post-game or Ultra Necrozma would have been really cool to discover for yourself firsthand, rather than having it spoiled by official releases and trailers. But they definitely learned their lesson this time around, and in the Sword and Shield marketing campaign, they've barely released almost anything about these games at all. In the very beginning of the marketing cycle, they gave away a lot of information regarding the starters, a few new Pokemon even, and some of the areas around Galar. However, they still left you with so many questions and just this huge thirst for more information about the region and the games that were going to be released. Throughout the summer, they released a few trailers here and there, which gave us nuggets of information that helped quench our thirst a little bit. However, the Pokemon Company was somehow capable of showing us absolutely nothing at all, while still showing us a lot about these games and giving us so much to be excited about. I mean, still today, with only a few days left until the launch of these games, we still don't know what the starter evolutions look like, and we still haven't gotten any official reveals for more than just a handful of Pokemon. We barely know anything about the story, the locations and the regions, the characters along with their motivations, the post-game, or many of the new and even returning features and mechanics. At the time of recording this video, the Japanese Pokemon channel has uploaded a total of 12 videos since the reveal of these games in February. The English channel 9, and although that doesn't include a few of the directs or the live streams, you do have to consider the fact that many of the trailers we've received as of late have actually just been a regurgitation of information we already know. Meaning it ultimately becomes very clear that we really don't know actually almost anything officially about these games at all. Now, comparatively, there were around 20 plus videos uploaded in the build-up for the release of Pokemon Sun and Moon. And every single one of these trailers and videos that was uploaded for these games displayed tons of brand new information, where almost none of them repeated information at all. Now, obviously, it took a small army to develop, create, and distribute these games. And Masuda himself in an interview was actually quoted as saying around 1,000 people had their hands on the development of these games in total. Of course, this does not mean that all 1,000 people had a direct influence on the programming and directional flow of these games at all, but rather many of these people actually played roles outside of the development of these games, including marketing, producing, localizing, and distributing. With around 200 or so Game Freak employees actually working directly on the development and programming of Sword and Shield, and about 100 Creatures employees working directly on the modeling of the Pokemon and characters within it. And as we've already seen from the preloads, this is by no means a small game. In fact, this is actually the largest Pokemon game that has ever been created. And even more, in fact, it is only a few gigabytes in size less than Zelda Breath of the Wild, with Pokemon Sword and Shield coming in at a whopping 10.3 gigabytes in size, easily 3 times larger than any of the previous iterations in the franchise. And when you truly take a look at all of the hard work that went into the development of the gameplay, it is very easy to see why. These games were made with the theme of striving to be the very best, like no one ever was, with battles being huge in Galar, quite literally with Dynamax and Gigantamax, but I'll get into that later. They also made the movement in this game free range, as opposed to being stuck to an X or Y axis on the screen like in previous games. And in the wild area at least, but probably in other areas of the game as well, we are going to have for the very first time in any Pokemon game a fully functioning 360-degree rotating camera. And on top of that, these games include by far the cleanest and sharpest user interface of any Pokemon game to date. The buttons and menu options seem extremely intuitive and add so much convenience to the player's experience like we've never had before. And not only that, but they've actually included gameplay integration with the user interface to include things like trading while you're actually still playing the game. And along with this new convenient user interface, it seems like Game Freak has really been putting a lot of time and effort into developing these games to make them extremely easy for anybody to play. And that doesn't mean that the games will be easy by difficulty level, but rather anybody could pick it up and learn how to have a Pokemon adventure in Sword and Shield. Even going as far as to developing new ways for trainers to learn how to actually grow, develop, and strengthen their Pokemon for just general battling or even the competitive scene. I mean, absolutely everything from training to trading, breeding to battling with other players has been made extremely accessible for anybody to enjoy together. And one of the final areas of work that went into the development of these games that we know of thus far is the graphical quality of these games. And although this has been a huge point of argument and contention among the Pokemon fan base, I do feel like this is partly due to the fact that there was an improper translation, or at least a difference among how people talk in different languages. And I think honestly, even the poorly rendered tree in that early demo version that everybody complained about from E3 would have been very easy to overlook if it hadn't been for the fact that there was an interview that came out where Masuda had explained that the reason for the Dex cut was due to the fact that they wanted to include more animations and more graphical quality to the other Pokemon and different models in the game. Now, obviously, I don't think that they're lying when they make a statement like this. I do think that the Pokemon Company and Game Freak made this decision in order to preserve the overall quality of these games in general. And because we don't know absolutely everything about the games, we're not entirely certain as to how the Pokemon and their models will be used in the various animations throughout them. And as for the whole controversy as to whether they reused animations from Pokemon X and Y or not, it was all put to rest when they had officially announced that they actually had to rebuild all of their models from scratch, as you simply cannot take the models from the 3DS and just transfer them over to the Switch. To me at least, it's common sense to assume that they're going to work off the same designs in order to save time, efficiency, and money, but I don't really necessarily see how that makes the models bad in quality overall. In fact, it's quite the opposite, as these are the greatest Pokemon models we've ever seen in a Pokemon game. Continuing on in a breakdown of the graphical quality, however, we have to talk about the lighting and the shading in these games, which is just absolutely pristine. I mean, arguably one of the most noticeable improvements from past Pokemon games, hands down. And not only that, but these are the first Pokemon games that entirely remove any and all borders around the models, providing seamless and smooth looking designs with extremely bright and vibrant colors. And with all this talk about models, we have to discuss the character models, which are extremely expressive and animated unlike we've seen them before, and that's including actually the player character for the very first time. The scaling of all the characters is extremely proportionate, unlike the strange large heads in Let's Go, and as I've said before, the customization in these games is second to none. Assets in the overworld are sharp and beautiful with rich textures and smooth edges. And although a few of these areas looked a little rough in the earliest first-hand looks at these games, most of these have been iron-tailed out in the later development leading up to the release. Now we have trees, mountains, and foliage that look absolutely crisp, towns and cities that are grandiose in size and scale, and views of awe-inspiring scenery. And wrapping it up for the graphics of these games, we have definitely one of the most exciting improvements being the Pokemon models, which have brought so much new life and personality to these Pokemon in the various new ways that they're implementing and utilizing these models. And I will be so very interested to see all of the different ways that they actually use them in-game. And speaking of in-game, we move into the second part of this video, where I'll be breaking down everything we know about the experience that we will be having directly, starting with the items, abilities, and competitive battling. And although we've only seen a few held items thus far, it does appear like they have actually included many new items that will help and benefit us along our journeys to join and battle in the region of Galar. In fact, they've actually showed us more of the consumable items that will benefit us in battle, including the brand new experience candies, which actually allow you to give experience to your Pokemon directly, rather than leveling them up one by one like the traditional rare candy would. And they've also shown us the mints, which will actually change the nature of your Pokemon. And for those of you who don't know, the nature of your Pokemon actually influences how your Pokemon will grow and develop based on their base stats. We also got the really exciting news that all other consumable items, whether it be for stat boosts or healing or training purposes, can actually be given to your Pokemon in groups higher than just one at a time. And although this may seem small for those of you who haven't been playing Pokemon for years on end like I have, but to somebody like myself, this is an absolutely huge convenience factor for a Pokemon game. Moving along to the features that we know of thus far in this brand new, beautiful, and expansive region of Galar, where we must first actually discuss that big, beautiful, brand new region of Galar, and the new culture, references, and even Easter eggs that will be hidden in the games for us to discover. The region of Galar is extremely different to the ones that came before, as many other regions actually had a very linear path as you traveled through it, and it seems like in Galar, you yourself will be in control of your own destiny. So much so that you'll actually even have the ability to turn off the brand new autosave feature that they have implemented, which in and of itself will really only come into effect when you're entering into new areas or buildings. However, I am well aware that there are many players that utilize soft resetting and wouldn't otherwise want an autosave feature messing that up. One of the biggest brand new features in this game has got to be the wild area. And quite frankly, this is unlike anything we have ever seen in a Pokemon game to date. And I'll tell you what, this open world concept is a very welcome change to the formula in my opinion, and includes a number of brand new features and mechanics that will really bring new life to the Pokemon series, including its utilization of multiplayer, which is actually now an MMO-like experience, where up to 4 players can join into one game and explore the wild area together, taking on max raid battles, hunting for Pokemon, scavenging for items, and looking for secret locations. And finally, for the brand new features that we know of thus far, we have the Gym Challenge and Champions Cup. Unlike in previous games where we had 8 gym leaders, an Elite Four that consisted of 4 trainers and then a champion, these games change things up a little bit. They still include gym leaders, although at this point we don't have verification as to how many gym leaders. However, as from what we know thus far, there will not actually be an Elite Four. Instead, the most powerful trainers from across the region will actually compete together once a year in the Champions Cup to determine who will be the ultimate champion. Moving along to probably the most exciting part of any brand new Pokemon game, we have the mechanics. Where up first, we have the Rotom Phone, which will be replacing the Rotom Dex of Generation 7, that not only catalogs the Pokemon that you've seen and collected, but will also add functionality to your bicycle, as well as possibly other areas of the game that we have yet to see. Next we have the Wycom, which is actually going to be the interface in which players will be able to interact with one another, whether that be for trading or battling Pokemon or exchanging league cards. And some of these functions have actually been shown to run while you're playing the game. Then we have one of the mechanics that I am very excited to see, which is the Battle Stadium. This will be the exclusive area that trainers will meet to take each other on in officially ranked or casual battles. This hub will actually allow trainers to rent teams from each other or even host their own competitions. Making its return after being absent from the past couple of games, the bicycle has returned better than ever, with added functions from its connection to your Rotom Phone to the most recently shown off minigame in the wild area. It really does appear like the bicycle is probably going to be most people's main mode of transportation. It will also be very interesting to see if another returning mechanic, fishing, gets any new additions or feature changes as well. Along with this, we have a couple of other returning mechanics that I'm extremely excited to see in these games, including the day and night cycle and dynamic weather, both of which will drastically affect the type of Pokemon that you will encounter in the wild area. And trekking back into the topic of transportation, we have the taxi service provided by Corviknight, along with the multitude of locomotive rails throughout the region. And as it's already been shown, HMs will not be making a return to these games, so it will be very interesting to see if there are other modes of transportation that they provide us for getting around. Next, we have a very unusual and interesting mechanic known as Rotami, and this essentially replaces the PC in every single physical Pokemon Center throughout the region. And these stations will be one-stop shops that will interact with your Rotom Phone, give you the functionality of a traditional Pokemon PC, while also giving you access to brand new features such as the Pokejobs. And although not a ton is known about this brand new mechanic, it is pretty safe to say that it'll probably be much like the Pokepelago of Generation 7. And similar, but way better in my opinion, to the Pokemon Refresh of Generation 7, we have the new mechanic of camping with your Pokemon. And of course, you can't talk about camping in Galar without also talking about curry on rice. Both of these mechanics look extremely fun and carefree, giving you the opportunity to relax and care for your Pokemon. And actually, throughout your journey, you will be encountering various raw ingredients to use in the cooking that will give different benefits to the curry that you make. A couple of the biggest new mechanics, I mean literally biggest, as in dozens of feet tall, would be Dynamax and Gigantamax forms. Now, all Pokemon in Sword and Shield will have the capability of Dynamaxing, which essentially just raises a Pokemon's HP overall. Though, in very rare circumstances, only a few select Pokemon will also be able to Gigantamax, which completely changes the way that the Pokemon looks and also gives it access to special moves called G-Max moves, which are incredibly strong, and every single one of them includes a secondary effect as well. And I do feel it is extremely important to note that both of these phenomenons can only be used in battle for a total of 3 consecutive turns before your Pokemon returns to its normal form. Now, these special Gigantamax Pokemon will only be able to be found in special Max Raid battles, along with a few special Dynamax Pokemon that are actually more rare to catch in other areas of the game. In conjunction with these Max Raid battles, Pokemon actually intends to do various events throughout the year in which they will release special Pokemon that are more capable of being caught during select times. This being very similar to what they do in Pokemon Go, where certain Pokemon are more apt to appear during raid battles, and even more possible of finding their shiny variation. Seeing Pokemon wandering freely throughout the overworld is something that I'm sure most fans probably never want to see removed from a Pokemon game ever again. And in Sword and Shield, Game Freak actually stepped it up even a notch further by also including wild random encounters and even giving you the opportunity to whistle and attract wild Pokemon to your location. And finally, for the mechanics, making its return after being absent in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee is breeding. Though Pokemon breeding is definitely going to be a lot different in these upcoming games than it has been in previous iterations, as you are now going to be able to teach egg moves to fully evolved adult Pokemon. And not only that, but including things like the mints that change a Pokemon's nature, really change the game when it comes to the purpose and overall intent that many people have when breeding. However, moving along, we have the plot and characters. And although we really don't know much so far regarding the storyline of these games, we do know that essentially the drive of all characters throughout the region of Galar is to be the very best. So far, we've been introduced to our rivals, Hop, Bede, and Marnie, the goof-off team in this region, Team Yell, this region's Pokemon professor, Magnolia, and her research assistant, who happens to be her granddaughter, Sonia, Chairman Rose of the Pokemon Gym Challenge, and his assistant, Oleana. So far, 4 of the gym leaders of the region, being Milo, Nessa, Bay, and Alistair, and of course the champion himself, Leon. And when these games launch in just a couple of days, it is going to be so much fun to meet the rest of the cast. And finally, for this breakdown of everything that we know thus far about Pokemon Sword and Shield, we have the Pokemon. Starting with the returning Pokemon, which at this point it's a little bit difficult to decipher as to what is exactly going to be in this game or not. There have been many conflicting reports and leaks and rumors and official stances, and at this point my overall feeling is that I'm just gonna have to wait until the games are launched this Friday, and then possibly even into January with the launch of Pokemon Home, when maybe even more Pokemon will be accessible in the games. We do, however, have brand new regional forms and regional evolutions for older Pokemon that we already know and love. Regional forms would include Galarian Weezing, Zigzagoon and Linoon, as well as Galarian Ponyta. And as for regional evolutions, we have Obstagoon, who evolves from Galarian Linoon, Surfetch'd, who evolves from Farfetch'd, and as of the most recent trailer that literally just came out, we have either a Galarian evolution to Yamask and or a Galarian evolution to Mr. Mime. For the new Pokemon that have been officially revealed, we have the starter Pokemon, Grookey, Scorbunny, and Sobble, the early route Pokemon, Gossifleur, including its evolution Eldegoss, Wooloo, Corviknight, Dreadnought, Roly-Coly, and even Yamper. There are the late in the game Pokemon, which include Alcremie, Duraludon, Impidimp, Poltegeist, Cramorant, and Morpeko. And we absolutely cannot forget the legendary Pokemon from these games, Zacian and Zamazenta. And as I mentioned before, this region boasts a brand new evolution called Gigantamaxing, of which a Pokemon entirely changes its form. And so far, there have been only a handful of these Gigantamax forms revealed. including those of returning Pokemon, Pikachu, Eevee, Charizard, Meowth, and Butterfree, and new Pokemon, Corviknight, Dreadnought, and Alcremie. Like with all other entries in the franchise, Sword and Shield will actually include version-exclusive Pokemon. Sword will include Dino and its evolutionary line, Jangmo-O and its evolutionary line, and Sirfetch'd, while Shield will include Larvitar and its evolutionary line, Goomy and its line, along with Galarian Ponyta. And this does not necessarily mean that these will be the only version exclusives in these games, however, it is all we know of so far. And that will wrap it up for absolutely everything that we know thus far about Pokemon Sword and Shield. As it is plain to see, these are going to be absolutely amazing games, a brand new experience in the Pokemon world. Like I've said before, my family and I will actually be sitting down and playing these games together and broadcasting both live and in Let's Play format for you to enjoy. And as a bit of a side note, I am definitely sorry about the sound of my voice right now. Let me know in the comment section down below what you are most excited about for these games. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, this has been Professor Noki, signing out once again for ProfNoki. You ready for bed? Okay, let's go brush your teeth.